We've got the mayor of Kansas City putting a bow on 2024 here on KCMO Talk Radio. In the studios, he is Quinton Lucas. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Good to be with you live in studio.
It's great to have you here, and we're getting you caught up on your Fox News here on a Thursday morning in the studio, so I know it's part of your morning routine, so I'm just keeping it going. It's only on for you, by the way.
Well, I love some good Fox and Friends. I've tried to get on more often, but for some reason, they don't want my takes that often.
I can work on that for you a little bit. I've got the local news on the other TV, by the way, just for people wondering. I'm helping our local folks here. So, listen, we're putting a bow on the year. We'll talk about kind of the year in review. But what's going on today? I know you guys are going to be voting on putting a jail finally back in Kansas City. What does that look like?
You know, there has been a years-long conversation about having a jail in the city of Kansas City that's dedicated to Kansas City inmates. This has gone through a lot of twists and turns. Background is the city used to have a jail, the old municipal farm. It's near Arrowhead Stadium. They got rid of it in 2014, 2015 timeframe. We started renting from Jackson County. Jackson County kicked us out years ago. We have been leasing from jails in other parts of western Missouri since that time. It is a system that is unsustainable for any number of reasons. If you're on the right, you likely see there's not enough jail space. Frankly, if you're anybody, you likely see there's not enough jail space. Our leftward folks have said those jails don't have some of the same amenities, mental health care, all of that we would like to see in the city. So this would be a vote in April 8th. It looks to renew the public safety sales tax that's existed since 2002. It has supported building police stations, emergency operations, municipal court, and this would be part of our new ecosystem. Altogether, you know, I introduced an ordinance back in the summer that added about 140 booking spaces to KCPD headquarters downtown on the 8th floor. That passed. We are already starting some of the work towards that. That's 140 plus about, I believe, 250 beds here. You will get yourself, all math totaled, about 390 jail spaces, plus another, I believe, 25 mental health beds working with University Health. This can be foundational change to public safety in Kansas City.
So right now, you're talking about, like you said, about 400 all in. Right now, there's zero.
You know, right now we lease 106 or so with other counties, but I think you're absolutely right to note that that is far under the number that we need.
So where's the public safety tax here, that the quarter-cent sales tax that would be renewed? Where has that money been going?
It has built a lot of our police stations. So if you've ever been up to the Regional Police Academy up north, Shoal Creek Patrol, South Patrol, Metro Patrol, we redid a lot of stations in the 2010s.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
They are beautiful. I would have loved to see someone at the time say, hey, maybe we should put a jail in that discussion too, but hindsight's 2020, and perhaps we thought we had that covered and would work beautifully with Jackson County forever. You know, some things change, but that is where it's largely been, and debt service on that.
Now you were on city council in 14-15 when this decision was made, right? That was early in your tenure?
I came on shortly after that decision was made. So I came on in 15. You know, that being said, I think it is a fair critique to say, you know, how was this missed? And I believe what we are seeing now is, you know, it's best to try to handle it yourself. Now, a lot of jurisdictions have combined county-city operations. Wyandotte County, the unified government, being the best example. A lot of our city inmates in Johnson County, Kansas, for example, go to the Johnson County jail, even if you have an Overland Park charge that gets you imprisoned. And so it wasn't necessarily a bad idea, but when you look at the volume of KCMO, the domestic offenders that we're dealing with, the others, you know, some folks who do some fairly bad offenses find themselves in the municipal system for any number of reasons. I think this is going to be good for us. I also look forward to Prosecutor-elect Melissa Johnson, a woman I know well, prosecuting a lot more of those charges that were previously handled by the city prosecutor.
And is that something, too, that will, you think, deter future crime by having her take that into her own hands?
Yeah, I mean, the city charge, the nature of a municipal ordinance violation is that we can only incarcerate someone for up to a year, and I think it's a fine of $1,000. That is the law, and that's the law just about everywhere in the country. And so you have people who are recidivist spousal abusers, let's say, and for reasons unbeknownst to me, and I've never run for prosecutor, but those folks end up in our local ordinance violation system. You need to at least have a threat of real penalties if you're constantly abusing your families. I'd like to see us use a lot more prosecution on the municipal side for gun-related offenses. You know, I know our police and prosecutors work hard to get the biggest charges, but something that I talk to Stacey Graves, the police chief, about all the time is saying, look, We've written a whole bunch of ordinance violations relating to gunplay in city limits. You're not supposed to fire off a gun in city limits. If they can't get you on the second-degree murder, if they can't get you on something, I want to at least get you on the lesser charges. We've seen that famously with Luigi Mangione in Pennsylvania, who had some gun charges before they brought him on the murder charge. We need to see that efficiency in Kansas City because swiftness and certainty is what we need for more of our criminals in Kansas City.
So the jail space downtown, that's already being built out. So when do you expect to be able to use some of that?
So on that one, we are really just talking to the engineers, the architects. I would expect that at the fastest, that's about an 18-month build-out. I would love to wave a magic wand and make it a year. I think that would be very helpful as we come to a World Cup and those sorts of things. I will note that is the classic for those who have watched television or movies. That is more of the classic drunk tank, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
That's where
what
the
that's
guy
be.
who gets in a bar fight in Westport, you're taken downtown, you got to spend the night, you have the embarrassing bailout with your wife. I mean, that's more the nature of the offender there rather than the person, let's say, who's looking at a 6-month sentence. That being said, in a world where right now we have people who are just getting cited with tickets. You know, I heard from my friends at the Linwood Shopping Center, 31st and Prospect, there'd be some people who were cited on a trespass. You know, you write a ticket, they just get to stay there. They come right back into the grocery store, commit some of the same misconduct. This allows us to change that. It allows us to sit down somebody, separate them from the bad conduct, and I think that's going to be positive.
So it does give you an option, at least over the short term, to use that facility.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. There's nothing that says you can't use that facility for that.
We can use that facility on just about any person.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be important. Where you have a domestic dispute, where you have trespass, where you have public intox, public urination, lots of other things that we deal with each day. I won't talk about it all in the morning. I think it could be very helpful for us to say, you know what, we're taking you downtown. And I grew up in Kansas City knowing that being taken downtown was a thing. I think it's important we get it back.
Mayor Lucas is here on KCMO Talk Radio. We are putting a bow on the year. So that's on the agenda today. Are you guys, is that the last meeting for the year? Or are you guys meeting the day after Christmas?
This is the last meeting of the year.
Okay.
We don't have nearly the intrigue of our friends across the street in Jackson County.
Yeah.
I welcome us not having that level of intrigue. We spent our ARPA money years ago. So this is probably the last big issue. There are some other things that folks are debating about, namely budgeting and all of that. But this will be a big one for us to wrap the year on.
Well, as a Jackson County resident and the mayor of the largest city in Jackson County, what do you make of what's playing out there across the hall?
What I have to say is I'm glad that it appears this morning from certain reporting that cooler heads are prevailing. I am one who supported the American Rescue Plan Act. I think it was an important, instigation for economic activity in cities and counties. I think there is a very fair critique. I heard that from legislator Sean Smith the other day that, if this was about COVID relief and we're spending it 4 years later, what exactly are we up to? That being said, I think revenue replacement is not just a lawful category, but perhaps an appropriate one. I'm just glad that things are getting done, but we can't always come to the last minute across the street on these types of debates. Leadership has a lot to do with compromise, and I'm glad we're getting there now. I wish it could have happened months ago.
I saw that you were you at the White House holiday party last week?
I was.
All right. So listen, I know people all over the country go to that. What is it just a party? What does it entail when you go to one of those things?
Well, this time around, the White House holiday party was a bit of a farewell for lots of folks. There were a number of governors there. It was kind of a presidential primary, it almost looked like, from the governor of Kentucky to Michigan, a number of others. Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, of course, who got some attention this past year. There are some important conversations, but generally the president comes out for brief remarks with the First Lady, and you visit with a lot of White House staff. Typically, it's in advance of what you're working on in the next year. I've been there before. We had more of those chats. This time around, there was a conversation I had about will they spend the money in Jackson County, but it was also this is what we're up to next.
You and I have talked about kind of the big picture stuff. Did you get a sense of looking in the mirror by some of your colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle based on November 5th's results, or no?
I think there was a lot of reality to this election, and you've been in this business for a while, and I've unfortunately been on my side of this business for a while. In 2016, that was the era of a lot of Democrats saying, well, the voters got it wrong, or Mrs. Clinton was just deeply flawed, or something under the sun. I think 2024, you're getting a lot more Democrats who are saying, maybe we need to listen to some different voices. Something that I have been saying on this show and elsewhere, and I've annoyed some people along the way, is that I think the voices of Middle America, the true voices of Middle America, not just us as a side kind of part of the discussion, need to be a big part of the leadership of what's happening in the Democratic Party. When you have party leaders, and I respect them both, from New York State and California, and now New York State and New York State, and really New York City and New York City, that starts to, in some ways, color what is the party discussion. There's a reality to how we live here, how we interact with people. I did hear more of that this time around. I think in the next presidential primary, which I feel like happens in a week, you will see a lot more of that discussion. Another thing that has been a subject of discussion, I'm a big fan of this, bringing the Iowa caucus back to its preeminent position in the Democratic primary.
This was the first year it was not number one, right?
It was not. It was not. And I think you saw conversation, and not to get too into the geography, the New Hampshire primary, while interesting and helpful, you fly to Boston, you drive up an hour, right? You're in New Hampshire, and you're in the middle of it all. Iowa, I guess you drive to Kansas City, and you have to drive a few hours, but you're still not really in Des Moines, and you're certainly not in Iowa City. And I think you have this chance to have some real Middle American principles tested out. I recommend that for Democrats the next time around.
Can they change that whenever they want to?
They can. They can. I mean, it's a party leadership issue. I would believe that to the extent I can get these people listening to me, I would certainly push it.
And how about your colleague there in New York, Eric Adams? I mean, he sounded like a MAGA guy. I don't know what's going on there, but what do you make of that? Is he getting red-pilled, or what's going on there?
Mayor Adams, who I've always considered a friend, and I've spent some time with him over the years, and we both inhabit what I think is the more moderate vein of the Democratic Party. It is not accidental that that's something that's inhabited by a lot of mayors and a lot of black dudes. I mean, to go back to kind of a chat, I know you've had Latino men, black men in the last election. You saw some change. President Trump pulled more of them on his side. And I think Eric Adams, a guy in his mid-60s, ex-cop, kind of fits central casting for that. I think the reality is, and I had a chat with somebody this last weekend about it, when you run a city or if you live in a city, you realize stuff has to get done. You realize some of the realities to what it is we have to do. People want to be safe. They want to make sure the schools are good and the infrastructure is operating well. Full stop. And we can get into a lot of other things, but that at its core is what it's all about. And I think Mayor Adams has said in a lot of ways, New York City alone can't answer the immigration crisis for America. And there's been a lot of attention to those chats, but I think we share the same view that we do need a national answer to that isn't just people showing up in places. I think Mayor Adams has also seen, and this isn't me saying that he's perfect, don't get me wrong, but I think he has also seen that we got to have cities that are attracting people who are building businesses and spending money. Cities themselves cannot be the basis for the social welfare state. And so I got to attract businesses to Kansas City. I got to attract residents. And I think those are the things that we're spending more time talking about.
And I don't deny that Mayor Adams is probably driven in part by politics. We know what's going on with his, DOJ issues, but it has been really interesting to see that relationship kind of play out. We're going to take a quick break with the mayor. We'll come back. We'll talk about the highs and lows from 2024, the best, maybe the worst, what needs to improve in 2025. Coming up next on 95.7 FM KCMO. We got a few minutes left with Mayor Lucas on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. All right, we're putting a bow on the year. Homicides are down by a pretty wide margin. As we've talked, though, non-fatal shootings are up. So when you look back on 2024 from that perspective, look ahead to 25, you can find good spots, you can find the not so good spots. What do you want to see continue in the next year, and how do you do it?
I mean, we need to continue to see the decline in homicides in our city. We're on a 5-year low. This is a positive trend. And by the way, it's not accidental. Our homicide detectives and homicide analysts, importantly, non-sworn officers, but folks who do outstanding and important work for KCPD each day, are doing a great job in terms of helping us solve it. We need to see that continue to decline. Areas of very real challenges, and you've talked to a lot of these business owners. Property crimes are an issue. How do we make sure at an era where we are probably not able to hire back 300 to 400 officers that quickly, where there frankly just aren't enough young men and women who are signing up either for police departments or the U.S. military or others? How do we make sure that there is a KCPD presence felt in more of those areas? How do we do more collaboration with community improvement districts and private security? That is something that I'm very interested in, and where, frankly, we need to improve mightily. I think our next prosecutor provides an opportunity, and I say this with respect to our current one, one, but we continue to see this great reset in the relationship with Kansas City Police Department, City Hall, and the prosecutor's office in Jackson County. I think Melissa Johnson has an outstanding opportunity to continue her good work with Stacey Graves, so that's going to be an area that's important. I could say a bunch of other things and ramble forever, but it's a great time to live in Kansas City. And I think, like anybody who's lived here for a while, there are two key challenges: public education and public safety. We spent a lot of time on the public safety side. I think we need to continue to see improvement there. On the public education side, continuing to work to say, how do we have good public education options in Kansas City, south of the river, is going to be a way that we can change, I think, population trends long term.
What is the biggest win for you when you look back on this year?
I have to say, on the economic development side, we had a lot of outstanding wins, and I'm just going to put them all in a bucket together. There are a lot of Kansas City naysayers, but this year we did a $500 million development in the West Bottoms of Kansas City, had a groundbreaking for that. There's a roughly $1 billion development that we had a groundbreaking for with a new CPKC stadium, something that rose during my term as mayor. Very proud of that. We've built thousands of units of affordable housing. That's my answer to some on my left who say we do nothing in that category. Yesterday, we were able to open a new grocery store in South Kansas City. It seems small potatoes, but I think what it tells you is we're doing billions of dollars of new work. We're attracting investor dollars from not just this region, but from around the country. Kansas City is hot. I think that has been a big positive, and we're keeping that Kansas City wave going compared to some other cities, not just in the Midwest, but even in our state that maybe aren't seeing those same trends right now.
What's the thing right now that you feel like you left on the table, biggest regret from the last year, policy-wise?
Look, we need to resolve the Royals and Chiefs conversation. It is ad nauseum. It's like the definition of it, the amount of conversation we've had, the new ideas, usually coming from radio. So go your medium.
We're doing our best here, right, fellas?
In terms of somebody draws a baseball diamond anywhere in the city, and they're like, this is going to be the new spot. I think we need to resolve that. The people of Kansas City, and frankly, the whole region and surrounds, want to move on. Governor-elect Kehoe, I think, is going to be interested in resolving that quickly, and so I'd like to see us resolve that. I also think that, I'm looking at my final 3 years as mayor. There are a few things we want to accomplish. I want to reverse the population loss we have in Kansas City, south of the river. I also think we need to build, a little bit more development in the Northland, not just housing and data centers. Those are great, but how do we build some of the sophisticated stuff so we can try to steal KCMO Talk Radio and the whole Cumulus family to build off Berry Road?
Well, tell the bosses. Listen, I love Kansas City. I just don't want to pay that 1% tax. I don't want to pay it.
Pete, I know they pay you millions for this job. So you got it.
Gosh. You see, but that's the classic viewpoint. Oh, you've got it. That's not how this works.
It is in many ways a regional tax that helps support everything that Kansas City has and makes the region better each day.
Well, that is fair, but I figure I pay that through your frothy sales taxes.
Well,
and they're frothy.
Our sales taxes or something. But I'll tell you, property tax, there's another ballot issue that may raise property tax in Kansas City this spring. That will continue to be the big conversation for all of us who live in Jackson County.
All right. So just with the Royals and the Chiefs, I know we've beat that thing to death. So I'm just going to keep this one fairly brief. We are less than a month away to Mike Kehoe being inaugurated. Give us a timeline for you personally on when you want to see things wrapped up, with at least a plan in place for both teams.
Yeah, I had hoped for December 15th, did not hit it, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. I think something about that relates to the fact that you do want to make sure you have a new governor in place, his whole team. He is keeping a lot of the same economic development people that Governor Parson had. I expect this to be an early legislative session conversation, so I'm expecting by February 1st or even February 15th, before the Super Bowl in New Orleans, I expect us to have a path with the Royals. I think the path with the Royals opens up the path with the Chiefs.
Okay. All right. So that's a soft deadline there, soft target date of February 1 or February 15th. Now, for you mentioned your 3 years left. There was some speculation that had November 5th gone the other way, you might be on a short list for a bunch of gigs. I don't know what your plans are now, but what do you look at for yourself here going forward?
Well, I have not sent my resume to President Trump yet, but
maybe be able to work on that if you're really interested.
I guess if they call, I'll be surprised. Look, I enjoyed being part of our national conversation for the presidential race. I got the chance to see the Vice President of the United States about a week and a half ago. I appreciate her public service and that of a lot of people on the Democratic side who will be moving on after January 20th. For me, I love being the mayor of Kansas City. It's a blessing. And, the oddest thing is this. I spend a lot of weekends, primarily weekends for those who think I don't do anything, but on the trail in the presidential race. Now I'm spending a lot of weekends with my kids and my wife. And the people who lost the most during my time on this campaign trail weren't the people of Kansas City. I was at work almost every day. It was my family. So spending time with them is special. I don't think my public service journey is done. I turned 40 years old a few months ago. I have a lot of gas in the tank, so we'll see what comes ahead. My life is not defined by having a political office. I was a almost rather successful lawyer before, actually, so it could always go back to that. But I'm interested to see what could happen. I don't know if it's statewide in Missouri necessarily, but I do think that there are ways that I can contribute long term.
He is the mayor of Kansas City, Quinton Lucas, in studio, looking back on the year 2024, and we will be picking up this conversation on January 2nd. That is our first day back after the holiday. So assuming your guys are back and you're working, we'll talk to you in 2 weeks, Mr. Mayor.
You know what? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody, and look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Well, we look forward to it as well. Mayor Quinton Lucas in studio this morning on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. As always, we're streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Coming up next, why did Jerome Powell cut the rates? Charlie Gasparino, Fox Business, will explain it on KCMO.